fulfilling somebody's needs. All right, camera's good? All right, here we go. So, today is November 21st, 2019. This is the regular meeting of the Woodbridge Conservation Commission. First up on the agenda tonight is public comments. No public comment. Next is to review and approve the minutes of our regular October 19th meeting. And I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
I wrote them, so I approve of them.
Is there any discussion? All right. All in favor of approving the minutes? Aye. All right. Unanimous. Now the next two items on the agenda I put here because often I found that our December meeting sometimes doesn't happen because it's close to Christmas and other holidays. So pushed it up to here, hoping we'd have a quorum so we could vote on it. And we do have a quorum. So to that end, the next agenda item is our 2020 meeting schedule to review and approve it. And I sent it around for everybody. It's all the third Thursday of every month at 7:30 here at the town hall. It's been that way almost as long as I've been here. I think we changed it at one point, but
I'm all for it.
you're all for it?
Yeah, we can
It's what we
change
do
it if
every
we
year,
need
right?
to,
It's
and
not
just
okay to
give
me.
notice if it's needed, if we anticipate a problem.
Exactly. If there's a conflict or there's a better time, we just cancel and provide proper notice to the town. And yeah,
In the minutes, can I just say the third Thursday of every month rather than writing every date?
yes, you could.
All right.
You could even just attach it to the minutes.
That's an idea.
So I'll move to approve our meeting dates for 2020.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay. Next up is to review and approve the 2020-2021 fiscal year budget. And it's always weird to approve this now because I feel like we haven't even finished anywhere near the end of the current fiscal year. But nevertheless, for those that are new here, if you had a chance, I'm hoping you took a quick look at the budget and what we propose and what we get, and it's always wildly different.
Quite a lively difference.
I looked at it, but what do we propose and what do we get?
I have simply copy and pasted year over year. So we have 5 topics that we focus on. One of them is the general professional services, and this is used to hire consultants to do either land appraisals or, in this case, I had rewritten the narrative a little bit. I talked about hiring them for natural resource evaluation and inventory.
So is that just like it's a budget in case there wasn't something?
At this point, yeah. And I think that's mostly why our budget is always,
Show me the titles.
We did hire for land appraisals at one time, didn't we? For land appraisals?
we did.
Well,
And,
yeah.
yeah. And on the big ticket items in the past, what's happened is that we've made a request to the town and the town has allocated funds to us to achieve that objective. So the town's been gracious enough to give us almost no budget, but accommodate whatever we ask for. So it's worked out. But certainly it's always nice to have a little placeholder and dream big, right?
So do we use up that budget usually?
Nope.
Do we
Yeah.
know what we actually use?
I would say the adopted budget for 2019-2020 to the amount of $400, we might probably use that up.
Oh, so they,
So we
Oh my gosh.
proposed a total line item of $9,700. They
God.
adopted $400.
It can't hurt to ask, right?
We can make our intentions clear and work within our constraints.
can I just ask a question? Is
Yep.
it usually 400 and we usually ask for more? Is that what you were saying before?
Well, it's changed, and I have I go a couple years back on this purposefully, so we could look a couple years
Oh,
back.
I
and
got
we,
it,
And we
I
did
got it.
have
900,
900.
and how'd we get?
They gave us for professional development and then programs and
Okay.
publicity
So they're not giving us any professional development this time.
for this fiscal year.
that
Although
mean?
I imagine that $400
We'll pay for that too.
will cover what we're using it for right now. So printing of Conservation Commission materials for meetings and brochures. We haven't done any, we've talked about it, but so far, the things that we've talked about making publications of, for example, updating the trail maps and whatnot. Betsy's been great about connecting with Scrog, and they've been doing the GIS mapping, the GPS mapping, the graphic design, the assembly and printing, so arguably that could have been done by us, but if another organization in the area is doing it for all towns under their purview, then sure, why not? We asked for money for programs and publicity for education. Oh, and then there's also the dues to open space organizations. We are dues paying members to several open space organizations, and that gets us discounts to things like upcoming where we're going to the Kakiwik conference. We get a slightly reduced rate for that. And then this one is interesting. So envelopes, mailing fees, and miscellaneous office materials. I have to say that's just been there as long as I've been here. So inertia has kept it in place.
There probably used to be more of that
Yep.
for email.
Mm-hmm.
It's mostly email nowadays.
Everything's electronically
Yeah,
distributed
yeah,
at this point, so.
electronic nowadays,
So, what other thoughts are there around the budget? No thoughts. Sure, go with it. See what happens. And what will happen is this will get submitted to the town, and then in January and February, Board of Finance will meet and have an opportunity for the chairs of each commission to come and plead their case as to why they need the money that's here. So if between now and that time where I go before the Board of Finance, we latch onto something that could have a strong reason to have $8,000 of professional services, I could present that case to them. So it seems a little premature to be asking for this money since there's not a specific target for it at the moment, but I think with some new energy on the commission, maybe we'll find somewhere to go with it.
Mhm.
At
Yeah.
the
Okay.
moment, I have no $8,000 ideas.
Well,
Not for this.
well-
Surveying any piece of land or anything
Yeah,
would
that's
use that
where it
up
comes.
immediately.
that's where it comes in.
So
yeah,
if we wanted
we
to-
have to buy land.
So maybe Sharon and I'll come up with some wild, crazy ideas at Kakiwik
That's
this
right.
coming weekend and come back with harebrained ideas. All right. I will make a motion to approve the proposed budget for 2020, 2021.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Okay, next up on the agenda is to plan a presentation on low-impact development. Frank, I'm gonna let you lead most of this, but we've talked about this. Frank's brought it up at the
Yeah.
last one or two meetings.
So, Yukon has a, College of Agriculture, Health and Natural Resources has a great program on this. They have the State of Low Impact Development in Connecticut. So it's from the University of Connecticut, non-point education for municipal officers called the NENO program. And what they have is they're trying to encourage more participation of land use officers to adopt the low-impact development programs. The way it works right now is it's suggested in most of our plan of conservation and development. It says adopt a low impact development regulations and best management practices into development regulations. It says adopted, but they're not really there yet, if you understand what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So that's on page 87 of the POD, under natural resources action plan. And also in the zoning, it says conditions shall be considered in the design it starts with planning and design, and then it says site planning, design practices, best management practices, especially those referred to as non-structural practice, low impact development and alternate site design techniques intended to mitigate the effects of changes to the land hydraulic conditions shall be considered in the design of a development proposal. But it's the way the language is, it shall be considered, you know. So the idea is to try to get these more of a requirement in these regulations rather than just as a suggestion or a consideration.
Mm-hmm.
So there's people, there's one of our representatives, Mary Mazinski, and she's from the Wallingford area. She's also on the Water Quality Committee of our West River Watershed Coalition. And
Okay.
she's pushing an effort to try to get people like us to suggest to the town officials that they're more stringent. The regulations become more stringent. At any rate, I thought maybe we could do some sort of presentation on this. And we did have one at the Watershed Coalition, and one of the authors of this State of Low Impact Development in Connecticut spoke there, so perhaps we get Michael Deaches to come to one of our meetings and you know, do a presentation. I'll see if I can.
What's his name? Mike?
Michael, and it's D-I-E-T-Z. He did a presentation for the Watershed Coalition, and we could possibly get him to come and speak about it.
So are you saying that we should get this person to come speak to us, or speak to us
No,
and?
just speak to us and present it to us, you know, and I think we
But
should be
should-
proponents for this. We should encourage our, you know, land use officials to.
Yeah, but would it make sense for us to have not only us come to it, but invite Wetlands and get to planning and zoning and TP&Z to come to it?
It would be a good consideration. Yeah, I think that'd be an idea if we did that, if we
'Cause I
get
think-
them,
Yeah, I think it would be beneficial to all of
all of us.
Yeah.
and if we can align so that they don't need to come back three times
Right,
to
yes,
give three
exactly, yeah.
individual
Yeah, if
meetings.
we could bring them, some people from, maybe town planning and zoning, maybe, the building department, you know, people who write our regulations.
Requirements about on-site stormwater management are usually in zoning, so that would make sense.
Yeah, well, it is,
That-
it
that
is,
would
but
be- that's where it's
even in
going.
zoning, I have something from zoning, and this one is from zoning, you know, and it says, you know, these planning and design practices should be protect and preserve, sites' natural features, preserve vegetation, avoid slopes, and it, you know, it does say best management, and there's a whole list of them. Minimize changes in surface water drainage, promote temporary storage of stormwater, all of those, promote infiltration of stormwater runoff, all of those best practices are mentioned, but they don't really have any teeth, you know,
You just should consider.
So could we give this within would it make any sense to just either do it in general or do it with the Woodbridge Country Club in mind? Is that too
Well,
political, or is it
I
like?
think you want it to be in general.
I think this wants to
Okay.
be in general.
Yeah.
I think what we're trying to do is get this those low impact development into our regulations is what I think, that, you know, in a more stringent manner, you know, more like a requirement than just a suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much, and us being, you know, stewards of the environment and of our open space, I think that would
I think it's a great
benefit
idea.
our open space,
Yeah.
It's big, because it really does make a
I mean,
big
it's-
difference in what happens to the stormwater runoff and how that's handled.
Right, it's using the information that's been gathered by many people to implement it in our town.
Yeah, and it is, we should, actually, this, if you just Google this, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
They have all the different towns and what the different towns have done so far. New Haven's done a great job. They have rain gardens, they have, bioswales, they've done a real lot on that. And the idea is to take that stormwater before it actually gets into the sanitary drains, the catch stations, and run it through a, either a rain garden or a bioswale, which filters it and slows it down, and at the same time, cleans it as it filters it, and it saves it from getting into the main, storm sewers, which
Yeah.
end up in the rivers, and
Right.
pollute
Yep.
the rivers, so.
This brings me to a point that I wanted to ask, since I'm new here, I'm not sure about this. Does any part of Woodbridge have combined sewers?
No,
Great.
they start,
Does New Haven?
they start around, the Westville area.
Okay.
The combined sewer
Alright.
flow, yeah, and that's a
Okay.
real problem.
Yeah, definitely.
That's
I'm not
real.
familiar with the term. What is a combined sewer?
It means the storm sewer and the sanitary sewer are.
Oh,
They're in the same
yeah,
pipe.
that sounds
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah, so when there's big rain events,
Over
You
2.5
can get-
inches usually.
overflows where the mixed water goes
Into the sound,
river
or, yeah.
whatever. Or, and most of the time it means that you have to treat all of it, so, it means the rainwater that's relatively clean
Is now getting treated
is
at the
going
water.
to a water treatment plant, which is also not.
Right, so you're overloading the
Yeah.
treatment plant, and at the same time, you're polluting the rivers. It usually happens after 2.5 inches of rain. The way the pipes are built, there's weirs, when it comes over a certain elevation,
Yeah.
it just dumps into the river rather than backing up into people's places or businesses or homes or whatever.
Really?
So-
I didn't know.
So it's pretty interesting the way it works, but, the, water pollution control people have actually increased the plant, down in New Haven that receives a lot of this water. But it's still advantageous not to have it get in there in the first place. So that's why this green infrastructure, which takes care of some of this water going in, is a big help.
It's, combined sewers like that are really common in the eastern half of the US.
Yeah, we're lucky in Woodbridge because the sewer system came in later, and they had but the sewer systems that were done in the 20s or 30s, were combined usually.
Yeah.
Right, so they start right around, if I'm not mistaken, let's say Dayton Street or down in
Yeah.
the Westville area. But Woodbridge is pretty, they're strictly, sewers are isolated from the storm drains, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, especially around the West River area, because
Yeah.
that's where our highest
especially around the
population
West River
is.
area, yeah. So, and that's why we have a water in Woodbridge, and when you get down to Westville, it changes to, it's impaired. It starts getting impaired when you get, the West River does, when you get down to Westville and Nevada.
All right, so I think Frank and I will work together.
Yeah, if we can get somebody.
You've got the
from
point of,
UConn.
you've got the point of contact. I will reach out to the chairs of the other commissions, TPZ, Wetlands, and who did I write down? Oh, us, WCC. Are there other commissions? I mean, I could certainly include,
I think building, I think it should go, I don't know,
So in the
Uh,
wetlands, TPZ, Conservation Commission, and Zoning Board of Appeals? Not really? Not as relevant to that?
I don't know.
Or CAC,
the
not,
people who
CUPOP is what I was thinking,
Yeah.
Commission of the Use of Publicly Owned
well, they
Properties.
can just not come if they don't think it's relevant too.
Maybe you just issue an invitation to them and then they can decide if they feel it's relevant.
That would be much easier than trying to align everybody's schedule. I like that. I have a hard time trying to coordinate
Yeah.
all of these people to have a meeting on the same day. We could say, this is when we're doing it,
Well, it
and
would
we're
be
inviting
good to do
everybody.
it our time, cause we know they're not at meetings at another time.
It's just, this is true, there's no meeting conflict on the third Thursday of every month, cause there can't be.
Right. So aim for third.
so I think the first thing we have to
Maybe
do is
January.
see if we can get,
I think I'd do December.
a speaker here for us, or, Michael to present
Yeah,
And
and see when.
is this like an
available.
hour-long presentation or a 3-hour presentation?
No, I don't think it has to be an awful long presentation. It probably, you know, an
Maybe we
hour,
can entice
or
people with
maybe 35 minutes.
baked goods or something and make it,
I think
it
an
might
hour
be a
is
nice
plenty
time
for
for people to
demonstration.
get together and visit for a half hour too.
I'm all for potluck, I like
Yeah.
potluck.
A dessert potluck and then,
But yeah, I think keeping it
Or
to
we
an
could
hour
host.
is probably good, cause
Oh,
personally,
yeah,
I
don't
find
think
that
I don't think it
listening
would
to
have be that
presentations and
long.
giving presentations, that once you
45.
get over 45 to an hour,
well, I think that might be good to tell people
People.
that it's gonna be a succinct hour-long presentation when we're presenting it so that they don't think, oh my gosh, I might be in for 3 hour.
yeah. Alright,
Sounds good.
alright, so over the next,
Are you moving to, we should make a motion about this or is this just an intention?
No,
I don't know if we need to make a motion for
Okay.
it. I think we're all in
Okay.
agreement that
Yeah.
we'll,
yeah, I think we just,
We'll try to
you know,
make it-
try to line this up. It might, you know, depending on Michael's schedule and, you know, whoever we
Everyone
can get
else's.
to come.
Yeah.
Might take a month or 2 months or whatever.
I wouldn't do
long it takes.
December.
Yeah,
No,
that's a good idea.
definitely.
I would wait till
December.
January at least.
Yeah.
That,
get past,
You'll get better attendance,
yeah.
yeah.
alright,
Okay,
excellent.
okay.
Alright, next item on the agenda is update on the former Woodbridge Country Club. So at our last meeting, we had the presentation by the proposed developer. And there was gonna be a special meeting and a referendum planned and all of that, and that all got put on hold. I have no updates from the town as to when that's gonna pick up again. I think the intention is as soon as possible. I think the idea is to not drag this out any longer than necessary. And I meant to look this up before I came here. I did some research shortly after our last meeting that talked about, was it called layered zoning, I think it was, where you've got your original zoning map, overlay zoning, and then they overlay another zone on top of that to modify it. And that's typically done to restrict what's going on, not expand what's going on a property. So this is, what they're proposing is a little opposite of the normal intention. They wanna allow greater development instead of restricting the development. I know that Maria Kane was reaching out to the folks at Kakiwik, and I had followed up with her about a week and a half after our last meeting, and she said they're still having internal discussions and that she was gonna get back to us.
Kakiwa?
Yeah, cause she's the chair
Oh.
for the New Haven area
Oh, I see.
for Kakiwik.
Okay.
Are they're actually looking for a specific recommendation from us? Because if that's the case, I think being what we are, a conservation commission, you know, we wanna keep as much land, open space as possible. And, you know, I don't think we're people that should really say we'd like to see, you know, some development.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
And I spoke with Leland today, and he shared the same sentiment that you did.
and
that-
if we do see, if they, you know, if the townspeople decide to do development, then I think we wanna see it as green
Yeah,
and
think that's the right
as well
sequence.
done as possible.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, being a conservation commission, we have to stick by our, you know, our charge, you know, to,
Yeah.
you know, keep as much open space as we can and to, protect the environment as best we can.
I even
Go ahead.
thought that, I know this isn't such a great time of year, but when I walked that property, I was struck by how pretty it was. It's really quite a pretty piece of land and quite extensive, and to maybe even at the town meeting to have some slides of it might be an interesting thing, cause people are making a decision about land they often haven't seen, and it might be interesting to show them what they're making a decision about.
Yep.
Be nicer in the spring than right now, but it's a thought of us just saying,
Yeah, it's beautiful
this is
stuff.
what this space is, that we're gonna change irrevocably.
I'm not sure I think we need to be opposed to anything that's ever developed. I mean, why bother having us if that's a pretty black and white stance. I think we can come up with recommendations. I mean, we may decide no, but I think we can also come up with recommendations to do things in a way that we think is more environmentally friendly. And however, I don't think we just, because we're conservation, we just have to oppose any
Oh,
type
no,
of
no.
development ever.
But, I think we should try to keep as much open space as possible, and I don't know if it should be our decision to say that, well, we want or we don't want this, you know,
I think we maybe could make recommendations that if this is something that the town decides to move forward with, then we would like to see these things.
right, then we would like
that-
to see as much preserved as could
So
be
maybe-
preserved and
maybe
it's done
do
in a
that.
proper manner.
I did find it a really dense, when I thought about it, it's a very densely, 120 is a lot on that land.
Mhm.
It's such a different, you know, and even 5 or 10 acres of it were gonna be the field house, the clubhouse, so it's even less.
Mhm.
So,
I found the presentation lacking sufficient detail to
Mhm.
make a decision on. I mean,
they could have had so much about how they were gonna remove the land and how they were gonna protect it and how they were gonna protect the silt and, you know, just all sorts of development issues that, and maybe it's a little premature, but this is actually the time to at least start to think about that.
right, and I think that's where he kept pushing back, is that they didn't want to invest the time and money
Right.
into this plan if it wasn't gonna actually turn into a project for them. But on the other hand, I think they should have spent the time and money to do it so that they have a more comprehensive,
Or be more
presentation
experienced so
to-
that you have the 7 other projects that you did, that you can say, well, we did this, we did this, we did this, we can do this, and then it might be evident that of course they're gonna do that because they did it on all 7 other plans.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel like they had a track record that expressed to me either that it would be obvious what they would be doing.
We had some big questions that were unanswered about the site and what was gonna be possible to build there, about, bedrock and how much they would have to excavate to build there, and about, there's something about
Blasting,
water
was there any
too.
blasting?
Wasn't there?
cause there is a small pond
There is a
in-
small
in-
pond if that would be
Yeah.
affected, yeah.
That those, like, whether you have to put in a storm sewer, actually,
Mhm.
and whether, if you have to, once you have to start moving rock, I mean, that really increases the cost of construction, and it could alter that plan quite a bit. So I think they wouldn't wanna, you're right, they wouldn't wanna put the additional money into, you know, time, labor, into developing the plan if it's not gonna go anywhere, but it's also that they needed that information, they needed the engineering component
yeah.
to be able
That's
to
what I
develop it
didn't have
further,
is-
and they don't pay for the engineering if they weren't gonna get the referendum, you know, so,
It's a tricky one, and I think you
Yeah.
made a good point at the end of the last meeting, is that we're truly voting on whether or not to approve development, period.
whether you want 120 dwelling units on 60 acres,
Yeah.
pretty much,
Yeah,
yeah.
cause the referendum can't be, do you want this with this in a bulleted list, and that's just too much to put on a referendum, so it's
Yeah.
more of a blanket
Yeah,
thing that's gonna go to the town.
And then I think we give up a lot of control once that, we say that as to
True.
what could occur.
Yeah,
I mean, cause they could say, well, you know, there's too much rock, so let's decide to put, you know, just
They'll
configure
move
it
it, so
totally
they might wanna
differently.
move it somewhere
Or
else
need
into
more
a
land
more
or-
pristine area.
yeah, I don't know if that's beyond our purview, but that seemed to me like that approval is so vague with it, like there's so much that can happen after you said yes and signed off on it, that I was really kind of uncomfortable with that, I don't know.
It should be more detailed, like Jason said, I mean, it should be a little more detailed, and they should answer some more questions of the manner that we had. A lot of folks brought up also.
Because I would think townspeople would have those same questions, I don't think that we
I
would
have those
alone.
questions as a townsperson.
Yeah.
Like, not just a commissioner.
And then we're very explicit about the low income you know, the green development, low impact,
But
or
they didn't seem to
exactly how
think that
much
was
they
the-
wanted to do with that, you know, I mean, they kinda, they did say something about solar, possibly do some solar, but even if it were approved, you know, they weren't very explicit about it.
Something else that Leland had mentioned when I was talking with him today is that he had talked to a couple land use attorneys and their position on precedent, that if an overlay zone is applied to this parcel, it's gonna suddenly open the doors
To other
to other,
places.
the attorneys that he had spoken with said that doesn't apply, that zoning is focused on that one parcel that's being considered,
Oh, okay.
and the next parcel that's being considered is a whole separate issue entirely.
Okay, so it would.
I think
it
human
wouldn't be a
nature,
precedent, no,
Yeah.
I think human nature might make that a gray area.
And also just, the people, the second people have a more rigorous foothold to argue it, even if it isn't, it has to be reconsidered.
Right.
Well, look over here, well, why not? You know, and logically, it does get trickier to just say no. If
Yeah.
you said yes,
Yeah.
sort of like with kids, you know.
What's context? I mean, I think this property's unique, and we bought it in bad shape. I mean, who knows the decision to buy it has been made, but I think it's, when you say precedent, we don't have another country club property that's a environmental hazard in and of itself just by being there because of that clubhouse.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's unique. I think there's, it's not just a random piece
Well,
of
that's
land
true.
somewhere.
I also was interested that we've paid off half of it, in another 4 years it will be paid off, and then it will be free and clear to either use it then for something that makes money for the town, or to develop it as another resource in a different way. So, and it supposedly costs each person $40 a year for each family.
You got a point there, but on the other hand, there's a lot of people that feel that the taxes have been going up and that the property values have been going down in Woodbridge, and
We have
Yeah,
like the
that's
worst in the state.
consideration, I mean.
We're really, we have like one of the worst markets in the state.
But there's a lot of folks that really
And
have
Connecticut's one of the worst in the
issues
country,
about
so.
that. Especially folks that are trying to sell the properties,
Yeah.
are starting to see that. More on the higher end properties go,
Right.
nevertheless.
And then talking about money, what they were proposing to sell these parcels for compared to what
I thought that was
you
a
can
little high.
buy 3
I
acres
thought
with a
that
2,000
was
square
just
foot
a
house on
little high.
is less
That's a
than
whole
what.
nother issue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it
So-
made it a
Yeah.
little less reasonable in terms of if being a service to the town, and it made us wonder about it a little more.
It made me wonder again, how much what they would actually build would be like that plan they were showing us, because those assumptions seem very unrealistic.
Yeah. So,
A little high price.
Yeah.
so I don't have any other updates in case anybody else has heard things through the grapevine and they want to bring up
Anyone
about
have
it.
any new development?
All right. We'll all pay attention to what's going on, certainly. The next item on the agenda is the update on the Thomas Darling property. I put this here for a couple of reasons. One, in prior leadership under the Conservation Commission, there's been focus on historical properties in town. So the conservation, talking about precedent,
Mm-hmm.
there's been precedent of the Conservation Commission, in particular going after water authority properties and trying to get them flagged as historic and protected in that direction. Fortunately, the Thomas Darling property, already fairly well protected. The town owns the property. It's in good shape, but it is a historic property owned by the town. And there's no historic district commission or something similar in this town focused on preserving town historic properties or parcels or buildings. So that's one of the reasons I put it here. And the other is that the current caretaker is a farmer, and he's farming on the Darling property. And one of the duties of this commission is to provide conflict resolution and advisory services when it comes to farmland in the town of Woodbridge.
Okay. So there we
Yeah.
go.
Because we don't have an agricultural commission, the Conservation Commission was tasked with this.
Assumes that. Oh.
We've
News to me.
we haven't had our nose in the middle of the conflict over at the Darling house,
Is
but
there a conflict over there?
so if you don't know, the Historical Society is not satisfied with the current caretaker, who's the farmer there.
I didn't know this.
And they feel that he's, I guess he's not living up to their expectations of his lease agreement. I know that there's been heated discussions at the Board of Selectmen about he is, he isn't. It's a two-sided argument. But the lease agreement is between the caretaker and the town of Woodbridge, not the Historical Society. The Historical Society has an agreement with the town to take care of the items in the house and also partially oversee what the caretaker is doing.
So that makes the town responsible for the house itself.
The town is responsible for the house, the property,
But not
and,
the article inside.
right.
What is
Okay.
the concern about his caretaking?
I've heard numerous things. I've heard that he improperly let people in for a viewing of the house, that I heard a rumor that there was a sword stolen. I was on the Historical Society for 5 years ago. I don't remember a sword being in the house, so I'm not quite sure what this is about. But it could, there's a lot of stuff in that house. I went through with the video camera at one point just to have a video record of what's in there, because it's not all written down. They were just rooms packed with stuff. So there could have been a sword tucked behind a bookcase in the corner of a room somewhere. It could have been just moved somewhere else and they thought it was gone, I don't know. But also there was accusations that the caretaker wasn't properly taking care of the grass or the snow or various other
They weren't
duties.
happy with it.
They're very unhappy with him.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to give my coloration to the situation.
There's been something in the, so I get the, I'm not in the Historical Society, but I get their newsletter or whatever because I live really close to the
Yeah.
Darling House, so I'm kinda interested in what goes on over there. And there's been something in their communications about it, about, him putting up structures on the property, like farming related structures, something about plastic not in keeping, does this ring a bell? Not in keeping with historic context.
I can
I'm
im-
trying to figure out what they were talking
I can
about.
imagine that going out.
I was thinking like, I don't know, hoop houses or
Hoop houses.
cold frames or mulch or something
Yeah.
like that.
So
They
the,
don't like the plastic.
yeah, I think they don't like a lot of things about the current caretaker. So at the last Board of Selectmen meeting, which I didn't get a chance to watch, but there was a email that had gone out afterwards from the Historical Society that says that they are unhappy that the Board of Selectmen agreed to keep the current caretaker there. They've been tasked with finding him alternative housing, and they're feeling aggrieved and are looking elsewhere to store their materials that are currently stored in the Darling House.
Wow, that's a
They
big
actually
deal.
wanna move.
So they're talking about picking
How do
up
they
their stuff
move?
and taking it out. So that's interesting.
Wow.
That's not under our peer review. We're not responsible for historical items in a house.
Okay, good.
But as I said, the two reasons I put it here is one, there's a farmer on the property, and we were tasked back in 2018 to assist in conflict resolution. I don't know, is this quite reaches the level of farmer conflicts versus tenant landlord or tenant overseer conflict? But also the Historical Society has been keeping an eye on historical properties in town. So regardless of what happens with the items in the house.
Yeah, I think of it more as farming related and how that's impacting as opposed to this issue.
Right.
I not, just from what you said.
Right, but because there's been farming on the property now for, I wanna say at least 5 years. It started with Aaron Taylor, now it's, Ethan. That if farming were to continue, Ethan's got his stake in the ground there right now. And his point is that being an absentee farmer is not really feasible, especially when you're only farming 1.5 acres of land. And that was the same issue that we had
I
had.
mean, he wants to live there if he's gonna farm it.
Yeah, yeah, for
Do
him,
they still want somebody to farm it, or they don't, they'd rather now, the Historical Society would rather now have no one farm it?
they like the farming. They have no issue with the farming per se, but they apparently have an issue with the caretaker.
And,
They wanna replace the caretaker, they wanna replace the farmer, actually, am I correct with that?
Right.
Same, one and the same.
That was just an update. I'm not saying we need to make any recommendations or positions, but I just wanted to keep folks updated. I know Leland, who's not here tonight, Leland has been a strong advocate for the caretaker down there. So sort of by proxy, there's been a conflict resolution representative from conservation in the mix. It's only by chance, because.
So he's not representing conservation, but he's.
Right. Yeah, it's like I said, by chance that he's present. Leland is a friend of Ethan and has tried to help and be a mediator in the situation between Ethan and the Historical Society.
So, but their complaints don't have anything to do with his farming, it's with his, it sounds like a character issue.
Yeah. Yeah, but.
Or he said, she said issue, unrelated to farming.
It's very confusing to
I'm
me.
looking for ways for us not to have to be involved.
I think we don't need to be involved.
Has anyone asked us to be involved?
No, not yet.
Okay.
What
But-
could we
but-
do? Like, what service could we provide?
Right,
Because they're content with having farming continue on the property, I think the only thing that we would strongly advocate for, at least I personally would advocate for, is that a farmer would need to be on that property, to live on that property, to oversee it. Because if you have to drive 20 minutes to farm your 1.5 acres,
I think that's
It's-
reasonable,
Yeah.
for them to want to be in residence.
and there's still the potential of farming across the street too, because there's the barn and the fields across the street. The issue there is there's just no irrigation.
But this,
Doesn't he have chickens as well?
We might,
yeah,
did at
The
one
pro-
point.
the prior-
It's reasonable to want to live there if you have chickens or other
Animals.
yeah.
Yeah.
Any animals.
so anyway, that is just the update. In case you're curious, that's what's going on at the Darling House.
okay.
Alright. Getting down to the last items here. Open space plan. So we did have some progress made the last time we got together and talked about the open space plan. There are still some items on here. So let me go through and I'm gonna highlight them right now. Greenways, map. Funding. Alright, so Christine had come and gave us a presentation on zoning. I have not fully digested and codified it in this open space plan. It's in my notes here. I need to go back and kind of make sense of it. I did read through the town charter and code to figure out what, if anything, in there speaks to open space or properties or whatnot. So I found a couple items. The charter section 4.8 talks about purchase and sale of real property. So in
4-8.
in prior years, we have talked about the town selling a particular piece of property over on Enoch Drive in town. The town owns the property. We pay annual homeowner association fees for that property and pay for plowing. There was talk about eliminating that and selling the property. I think that went nowhere. But anyway, that's a real example of why this particular section of the charter is relevant. And then we get into the town code. I thought it was called ordinances, but no, this is the code. And I called out specific chapters. This is chapter 208 about drainage and thinking about low impact development and how water is managed.
207
Yeah.
something, thanks. Yeah, I looked at that also.
Chapter 264 talks about historic preservation. Chapter 370 is stormwater management, kind of lines up with drainage. And scenic roads, chapter 375, article 2. Scenic roads. So that was of interest just because I recall the Baldwin property over on the west side of town. Along Baldwin Road, there was a large piece of property that I believe is now, if it's not been purchased, it's in the process of being.
Close.
Yeah. One of the ways to protect that property was to designate Baldwin Road a scenic road. And once something is scenic, there's reasons for it being scenic. And if you change those reasons, you can't, because it's a scenic road. So scenic roads can affect preserving properties, which was interesting. Or gives it, doesn't necessarily stop things from happening, but it puts a barrier up that has to get moved,
Interesting.
moved around, yeah.
So we might wanna think of other roads we might wanna consider scenic.
Perhaps.
Get them designated as scenic
Get
roads.
Woodfield Road designated as scenic, and that could be a problem
There you go.
for development on Woodfield Road. I don't know.
So Woodfield Road?
I'm not saying we should do that, I'm just
I know.
saying if we, that's a hot button
Jason
topic.
Morrell.
It is a scenic road. I mean, it's more scenic than some.
So the kind of preservation you would have with that would be that you can't change how it looks.
Pretty much. Yep. Yep. And in the case of,
You can develop it any way you want, but you can't change how it looks.
The road or even the
That's-
area
It's
that
about
you look
visual
at,
impact.
yeah.
yeah. But those were the ones that I had come across as I was reading through the town charter and code. Now, I welcome someone else to go through it. You might find a few other little tidbits, but those seem to be the low-hanging fruit. I mean, I didn't spend 3 hours reading it. I probably spent an hour going through all of it, skimming a lot. There's lots of headings that clearly don't affect open space whatsoever. But those were those.
Interesting. Well, maybe we could talk about each of those at some
Is it-
point a little bit more and flesh them out in terms of how, what effect we might have on those.
Yep.
What were you gonna say?
The 490 Act, that would affect open space too, you know, I don't know where, in
What
what
is
regulations it is.
Public Act 490,
Yeah,
it
right.
affects private property in terms of designating it as open space or farmland.
For so many years, like for 7 years, I believe, however long.
And it has to get renewed,
Then it
is
has
that-
to get renewed,
so
yeah.
it reduces your taxes, is what it does.
Is that town or state? That 490?
I don't know. I don't know.
Is it that you think it's town?
I don't know. It's been brought up in the town plan of conservation and development. PA 490 is called out explicitly, but I don't know if it's town only or if there's a state that the town is following, a state precedent that the town is following.
Well, the taxes are town taxes or state town taxes?
Yeah, town
So
property
it's probably
taxes.
town.
Okay. There's a section in here, the natural resource inventory, and it's big. There's a lot of stuff in here. I'm on the fence as to whether or not it stays here or turns into an appendix.
Oh, I definitely make it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Especially since some of it, the big table that's here is potential wildlife species. You might see this in town.
Yeah.
It's something that could consume a lot of time developing,
Mhm.
and I feel like it's such a hard thing to wrap your hands around, just because flora and fauna don't stay where you put them. They kind of move and blow in the wind and travel. So,
Well, we could easily spend our whole $8,000 getting a wildlife biologist and a ethnobiologist, any number of people to
weigh in.
weigh in because they would know more and see more, but
Yeah.
I don't know that, that's a question whether we really do have some rare things that are worth protecting or if it's just, the generic things that's in every single town around here.
It might make more sense to list rare things that are worth protecting than have a comprehensive list of everything that's present. It might be a
The-
lot more doable.
If it'll feel less.
Yeah.
Worth protecting. an
it'll
awful
feel
lot.
less
I looked
daunting.
at that before.
Um,
You know, if you start doing it, you could.
yeah. In the state statutes for conservation commissions, it says the conservation commissions may inventory natural resources and formulate watershed management and drought management plans. So it is under our purview, but yeah, it's a bit much, so. My thought is make a single paragraph talking about the inventory and stick it into an appendix that says this is what we currently have, and it'll continue to be developed, refined. All right, the next section, methods of protection and acquisition. This seems worth having in here mostly so that when there's change in this commission, new people come on, it's helpful to know, because this is a question that comes up all the time. Well, if you're gonna buy a piece of property, what do you have to do? Or what tools are at your disposal? Or what can't you do? And those are the types of things that I would like to see put in here. But for this revision, just to make this 2019 stamped on it.
You've been saying this is what, 2016, I think?
We have an official 2017 one out there.
Do
so,
we?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was lacking some of these sections, but it might continue to lack this section.
Well, maybe that would be something to work on and discuss in the next 6 months. How would we, I mean,
It hasn't come, well, acquisition comes up from time to time. Mostly it's just buy it.
Yeah.
But there are other ways, and I just thrown a couple examples. If you purchase the development rights, you can protect a property that way. Or if you buy the conservation, you hold the conservation easements. That's another way to protect properties.
Shouldn't that PA, what was the number?
PA 490?
Shouldn't that be in here too?
I'm not sure if that is a protection. It's certainly an incentive to protect them.
Incentive.
It's an incentive for private landowners to keep it as farmland or open space.
that's the form of protection.
It is
I
a,
think.
yeah. Oops, what happened there? Oh my gosh, no, there it is. But I'm thinking, let's just strike that section for right now and move forward.
You mean strike it or just,
Leave it off for now.
I'll leave it off for now,
We can
come
work
back to
on
it.
For the next,
Put it on the next draft.
okay.
we update every what?
Yeah, I mean, if you're at the
2 years.
point where you need to just get it in, then do that and we can
Yeah.
revise.
But it would make sense to keep it as a placeholder and say to be developed or in process or,
We could leave it as a placeholder. I could list these 3 things saying that
these,
these are several methods of protecting properties. I just don't want it to look like it's incomplete. I would like it, if anything, we could be brief. And then the next time someone reads through it saying that's not sufficient, we need more detail.
yeah, cause I'm afraid it might just disappear, and I think even if it was just in a sentence structure, these have historically been used in our towns.
How about current methods of protection and acquisition include 3 bullet points, purchase of development rights, conservation easements, and
The
PA 490
490.
if you wanna include that, if you don't, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, something as simple as that.
That's
Okay.
the section.
Yeah.
And-
Year
and-
2019.
And at least it's there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
To your
it
point,
works.
that way
Right.
it just doesn't disappear into the
Right,
black hole that no one thinks of again. Okay. The properties worthy of acquisition, this is a big nut to crack. There's a lot in it. And we talked about getting Chris, she said, call her Chris, right? She didn't like Christine. Because her mother's calls her Christine, is that what it was? We were gonna go to her and ask her for a list. I don't know if we've gotten around to that. But just from my own experience of going through all the properties in town, this is pretty close to the big items that
okay, so
are
you,
in
it's,
town. And it's been the same for many, many years.
that's good.
The same
Means
properties
they
are
haven't
here.
been developed.
Yeah, and they're still available, although we might be able to take out 902 Baldwin Road, cause that's the one that the land trust has
Yeah,
been worked on. So I don't think this section really needs anything
that looks like it's pretty,
changed right
Well.
now. It definitely,
I mean, maybe we should have Chris look at it and see if she can think of any others.
sure, yep. Yeah, if anything stands out to her,
Yeah, if there's a
she,
missing,
cause she might have in her mind 45 Blue Trail or whatever
right,
is a great parcel. It's not on your list, maybe you should put it on there, right?
yeah,
I don't even know that's a real address.
I know,
I'm just,
that one definitely should be on there.
I insist.
they'll spend all day looking for this one property that doesn't exist.
Yeah, so could we send her an email and ask her to just review it?
Yeah,
You'll do that?
yeah.
With what section is it? Possible,
Properties worthy of acquisition.
Yeah.
The next section is management of current land holdings. I think this is also gonna turn into one that needs more detail later, but the thought here was who is in charge of maintaining what? And this kind of ties in nicely with another project that I'm involved in town with who's in charge of the trails and
Pretty
What
much
do you
a
do?
lot of it right there.
But this is a bit bigger, who owns the property and who's in charge of it, instead of just the trails that go through the property. And sometimes they're one and the same.
Sometimes, but Alice Newton is one.
That, you know, Alice Newton's got two owners to it.
Oh, has it? Oh,
There's the Alice Newton's-
I thought the committee did that.
I
thought
did
they had a
too.
committee that did
So the
that.
Alice
Is that
Newton-
right? Yeah.
Funny,
Parks.
just anecdotal sideline here. So the
Okay.
Alice Newton Street Park is predominantly owned by the Parks Association. But there's a small chunk, the Whippawag Falls,
Mm.
is owned by the Land Trust.
Okay.
And the Land Trust wants to maintain that part. They're not interested in maintaining anything else other than that one little part. And the Parks Association is okay with maintaining that little piece, but the Land Trust says, no, we wanna,
keep our
But,
toe in there.
yeah,
Doesn't Alice Newton have its own committee that takes care of that?
they do, they do,
That, the rest of the property?
yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
that's what I thought. So they maintain that, other than the parcel by Rice's Bond or whatever.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But the other management of the properties, I mean, right below this, you see the current land holdings, and it's a fairly extensive list of what the properties are, who owns them. I think it's all, in this case, it's all town properties. But there are land holdings that are owned by the Land Trust, owned by the Parks Association, and owned by the town. So this management section could just be properties owned by the town or managed by the town. If you're owned by the Land Trust, Parks Association, Parks Association.
Pretty much.
But again, my whole idea here is that new members coming on, this can be sort of a go-to document to help you get a broad picture of what's going on and not find out 8 months in, oh, this is something that I should have known at the start. So, since there's two members here, if there's things that have come up that you, if we come across in another 4 months and you say, I wish I had known that 4 months ago, that's the kind of thing that I think should go into this kind of a document.
About the list of properties.
Or just in general, about the open space plan.
Well, the thing
Who
that
owns
you
and
said
manages?
a while ago about a part of what this commission is supposed to do is what was it?
Farm
The farm.
Advocate for,
Farm
Yeah.
Yeah.
disputes.
for farms or for agriculture, that would be good if that was
Okay,
documented somewhere. That was kind of a surprise.
to make that a little
Frank
more,
and I were surprised by that.
to make it a little more strong and clear, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
conflict, resolve conflict.
That was it. It was conflict resolution.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was it.
Resolution, yeah, that was smart, I think.
Yeah, that was, I didn't see that coming.
Mhm.
I didn't either. So there's 9 items that that the,
Is it in there? One of them is.
it's not in the open space plan. I did have a single document called Conservation Commission Duties and Purposes from October 2018. And there's 9 items at the end that relate to farmland preservation. And one of them is provide conflict resolution and advisory services. It's kind of broad.
Is it right there? It's somewhere.
It's number 7 down there.
But
And
that's
this has
only
been handed
because
to us.
we don't
We
have
didn't
an
decide on this. We chose this.
So on this one, before I go on to that, any other talks about the open space plan for the moment? Because I think we were at the end because we hit the list of town-owned properties. Okay.
That's good.
So in the summer of 2018, there was, I think it was 2018? The spring of, anyway, last year. Seems like a long time ago.
It was.
A raised hand.
I have
You
a
want-
question. Do we actually have to get home to do our homework?
You want to sign?
I apologize for interrupting.
No, that's okay. We're getting to the end, but come on up. We'll,
Yeah, my
we'll get you.
apologies.
Now they need to sign off.
See, now you should have come up like your other fellows come at the beginning. We've been visited by several groups in the past,
So I hear.
and they get us in the very beginning.
What is this for?
Critical issues class at Amity.
Had 2 town meetings.
So that's what we do.
Good job.
It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Stuff you didn't think about.
Learn something new every day.
Tell
Okay.
us what you know.
Yeah, tell us what you learned.
We learned about the, the house.
The Darling House. See?
That was
Actually,
interesting.
talked about that quite a bit in class.
Yeah, they talked
Really?
about it a lot in class, and they've also talked about living rooms too.
You guys probably know more about it than we do.
It's pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Have a good night, guys.
All right,
Right,
take care.
nice to meet you.
Thank you for coming.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
So in 2018, there was an agreement between the town of Woodbridge and the state of Connecticut in regards to farmland preservation program and the community farms preservation program, 2 different things. And to apply for those programs, the town has to designate an entity
I see. Yeah, got it.
to do these things, and there's 9 things. And because the town didn't have an agricultural commission or any other farmland specific group, we got pointed out. So conservation does these things.
And so every town
Which is
has a
common
group
in
that does
many
this.
towns in the
No,
state.
no, other towns have an agricultural
Yeah,
commission.
There's-
But many also have the conservation doing these
And,
things.
and some have none of this because they don't want to apply for the farmland preservation
Got it.
program or the,
And is there any training associated with this?
no.
That's fine.
You could be conserving farmland instead of conserving, open space or
Right.
conserving,
Yes.
natural landscapes or,
Yeah.
like people use conservation in that way
Mhm.
too.
But I think to your point is you don't feel properly educated as to how to go about doing these 9 things. And that's fair. And that's been the argument along of why the town might need an agricultural commission.
Mhm. I understand. Okay. Should we move to, is there anything else?
There's the chairman's report.
Okay.
I report that Sharon and I are going to learn things on Saturday.
Thank you.
We're going to the Connecticut Association of Inland Wetlands and Conservation Commission's annual conference.
I am eager to hear what they have to say
Oh,
about
we'll give
the
an
resurgence of
extensive
black
report.
bears.
Oh.
I was,
The resurgence of black bears.
yes, so I look forward to your comments about that.
I'll pay attention now to the resurgence of black bears.
I don't totally see how that's actionable for this commission, but
Well,
They're in town.
they're here.
They're here.
They
They've
seem to
walked-
be doing okay.
Yeah.
They've walked through my
Yes.
backyard.
In my front yard.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's seeing them.
I haven't actually. I'd like to.
And that is all I have to report on. Oh, what was the other thing? It's so rare I actually get town materials here. There was an application to approve construction of a residential house near a wetlands. And they went before inland wetlands last night. And I don't know how it ended because I did not watch inland wetlands last night.
What was the house?
It's a property at 15 Meadow Crest Circle. I don't know where that is.
I don't know the area, so I can't.
I'm gonna guess it's a dead-end street because it's a circle.
Good thinking.
But they,
Sounds yeah.
because they were developing land, I think it was within the 100-foot setback of wetlands.
From wetland. Did they need a variance? It doesn't say that.
So do we usually get involved in that or not?
It's not like our,
We haven't, and this is the first time it's ever happened. So
That you got the list.
I know. So I feel like I have to mention this.
Wetlands usually takes care of it, if it was an issue.
But they sometimes want the Conservation Commission's perspective if it's a big enough piece or if there's enough impact, but it sounds like it's a,
It's a residential 4-bedroom house, drive, and septic system. So it's not a development, and it's not a subdivision. And 4 bedrooms, I'm gonna guess it's probably a 2,500 square foot or less house.
oh, I wouldn't assume that.
I don't
If
know.
it's
If you go
100
over
feet,
2,500 square feet, you might have one of the 4 bedrooms. Or they're just really big.
Meadowcrest Circle is a very short dead-end road, off of Crestview, which comes off of 67 just to the west of Peck Hill.
Okay. It might be,
You look at the map if
Seven
you want.
west of,
it might be, there was a lot of wetland around that area.
oh, that's right, isn't that, is that where there's that pond, is that where the pond is?
There's a pond there and there's some sort of a stream or,
That could be a
Black
dicey
Brook,
area
it
to,
says.
Yeah, they can be concerned about,
No, no, we're not gonna
back
talk
in the wetland, and they wanted another pair of eyes on it, maybe, possibly.
All right. That is all I have. I will make a motion that we adjourn.
at
8:45.
second, oh.
we're all asleep
Yeah,
already.
yeah, at the same time there.
All in favor?
I
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.